Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission, as always, is pretty straightforward. We dig into compelling sources, research sacred texts, scholarly insights, and, well, pull out the crucial knowledge for you, making the complex clear. Today, we're diving deep into something quite foundational. We're exploring the, let's call it, spiritual geometry of dawn. We're unpacking the huge significance of the Fajr's prayer, the dawn prayer. And this isn't just, about going through the motions. It's really about understanding an institution that shapes a believer's entire day, their entire life in many ways. We've really immersed ourselves in the core text, the Qur'an, the authentic Sunnah, the detailed analyses from classical scholars to get why this one brief prayer is valued so uniquely. So, Fajr, just to be clear, is that prayer performed in the specific window between true dawn, that first horizontal light, and the actual sunrise. The sources really frame this as the spiritual kickoff for the believer's day. It kind of sets the tone, the intention, the whole spiritual energy.
Exactly, and that's the critical thing, isn't it? It elevates this prayer beyond just, well, ticking a box. If you look across the sources, this brief pre-sunrise time slot is highlighted again and again. It's actually the only prayer that God swears an oath by, specifically in the Qur'an. And the rewards promised for it. Well, the jurists consistently analyze these as transcending all worldly value. It's quite something. So performing Fajr consistently, especially because, let's face it, it means overcoming comfort, sleep, that inertia. It's seen as this immediate, very practical sign of sincerity. It's not just recommended. The sources present dedication to Fajr as a real hallmark of true faith, Iman. It sort of separates the committed from the maybe more casual observer.
Okay, right. So let's unpack this then. If Fajr is that profound, we need to follow the evidence in the sources. Our deep dive today will look at how this prayer is framed as, well, a cosmic event, a kind of spiritual shield, and really the key to a protected, luminous life. And we're sticking just to the primary text. All right, let's start where the ultimate authority lies. The Qur'an. It gives this Fajr moment a kind of celestial weight that immediately signals its importance. It suggests it's not just something happening on Earth, it's an event being noticed, upstairs. Hashtag check 1.1, the command for the witness recitation. Let's zoom in first on Surah Al-Isra, chapter 17, verse 78. There's the command to establish prayer, right? But then it specifically mentions, and also the Qur'an of dawn, why that specific phrase, Qur'an of dawn, instead of just saying the prayer, the salat.
That specific wording is really key. The classical scholars, the experts in Quranic interpretation, they pretty much all agree that Qur'an al-Fajr, the recitation of dawn, is a powerful way of referring to the entire Fajr prayer. It highlights the focused engagement with the Quranic text that's expected during this time. Often the recitation in Fajr is longer, more deliberate than in other prayers. And that quiet pre-dawn time is just perfect for really absorbing the meaning, the weight of the words.
But the technical side, the command itself, seems almost overshadowed by the incredible promise that comes right after it in the verse.
Precisely. That's the clincher. The verse finishes. Indeed, the recitation of dawn is ever witnessed. Shoot. Now, that is the critical piece. When we hear witnessed, we might think, people watching.
Right.
But the prophet, peace be upon him, he clarified this specifically. Mashud means it's witnessed by the angels of the night and the angels of the day.
Okay, so that's where we get into the logistics of the divine realm, as you put it, a celestial assembly. What are the details there? How does this changing of the guard actually work, according to the sources?
The details are actually quite vivid in the authenticated narrations, like those in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Essentially, the sources explain there are two groups of recording angels working in shifts. You've got the night shift angels and the day shift angels. And they overlap at two specific times. The Fajr prayer and the Asr prayer, the late afternoon one.
Okay.
So Fajr is the time when the night shift angels are getting ready to ascend, to report back, and the day shift angels are just arriving to take over, to start recording the believer's actions. The timing is divinely set so that the person praying is, caught in the act of devotion by both groups of angels.
So it's like being under dual observation, or maybe dual testimony is a better way to put it, at that exact moment.
Dual testimony is exactly right. And that testimony forms the basis of their report. So the angels who are on duty during the night, they ascend after Fajr. And the sources tell us. Allah asks them.
Right. This is the part I find fascinating. He asks them, in what condition did you leave my slaves? But if Allah knows everything, why the question? Why ask the angels?
That's a great question, and the scholarly consensus on this is actually quite beautiful. The text does say Allah knows best. So the question isn't for his information, it's for the worshipper's honor.
Okay.
The question acts as a kind of ceremony, It allows the angels to give their testimony formally, publicly you could say, in the divine court. And this honors the believer who chose submission over sleep at that crucial time.
And what is their testimony? What's the official report they give?
It's simple but powerful. We left them when they were praying, and we came to them when they were praying. And that really is the core takeaway here. The timing of Fajr is deliberately set for the celestial handover. It guarantees that the believer's first conscious act of the day, prioritizing God, gets officially documented, certified, in the spiritual books. It formalizes their devotion and basically sets their status for the day as someone actively engaged in submission. It starts the day with a confirmed positive spiritual record. Hashtag tag 1.2. The divine oath and its symbolism. Surah Al-Fajr.
Okay, so the command establishes this cosmic meeting, but then you have the divine oath in Surah Al-Fajr, chapter 89. That really cements the spiritual weight of this time, doesn't it? The chapter opens by the dawn and by the 10 nights. Just putting Al-Fajr, the dawn, right there is the first thing God swears by. That feels significant.
It absolutely signals something fundamental. Whenever Allah takes an oath by something he created, it points to that creation's immense importance or its power or its symbolic meaning. And what's really compelling here is the layers of meaning the classical commentators found in this oath. It's much more than just, the sun coming up. So the first, most obvious meaning is the literal dawn. The oath points to Allah's incredible power to bring the world back from that state of stillness, almost like death, during the night, back to life and light and activity. It's a daily miracle we witness, this reversal.
But the scholars saw more symbolic layers too, didn't they? Especially thinking about when the Surah was revealed.
Absolutely. Commentators like Fajr al-Din al-Razi, they explored the connection to what they call the symbolic dawn of Islam. Remember, this was likely a Meccan surah revealed when the early Muslims were facing intense persecution, surrounded by the darkness of ignorance, jahiliyyah. So, the oath by the dawn was understood as this absolute promise of eventual victory. Like, just as the night cannot stop the sun from rising, the darkness of oppression would eventually be overcome by the definite, radiant light of Islam. It was a message of profound hope, of certainty.
That makes sense.
And then you get to, perhaps, the deepest layer, the eschatological dawn. This interpretation sees the daily cycle night as death or sleep, dawn as resurrection or waking as this constant, tangible proof of God's power to raise the dead for Judgment Day. Every single morning when you wake up, you're experiencing a mini resurrection. And this connects directly to that prayer we say upon waking. All praise is due to Allah, who brought us back to life after he caused us to die, and to him is our gathering, meaning our resurrection.
So the daily Fajr is like a physical rehearsal, an experiential reminder of Judgment Day itself.
Exactly. And that leads right into the structure of the surah. These oaths aren't just fancy introductions. They set the stage. Immediately after swearing by the certainty of the dawn, the surah shifts to talking about the fate of arrogant civilizations, Ad, Thamud, Pharaoh, all of whom face certain divine justice.
That connection structurally is really stark when you point it out.
It makes Fajr this daily reminder of ultimate accountability. The same creator who reliably brings light out of darkness is the one who will reliably bring about the day of judgment. So every morning when a believer stands for Fajr, they're reminded of this certainty of where they're ultimately headed.
Okay, so the Qur'an gives Fajr this cosmic status. Now let's turn to the prophetic traditions, the Sunnah. This is where that status gets translated into, well, tangible rewards, eternal benefits, and also immediate daily protection. These are the payoffs, if you like, for making that effort to get up. Hashtag 2.1, rewards that transcend the world. Let's talk about the sheer value here. We're not talking small change. We're talking about comparing a short spiritual act to, well, everything. I want to start with those two voluntary units of prayer, the rakas, that come before the main Fajr prayer. The sources say they are better than this world and everything in it.
That statement is just staggering. It's probably the most striking valuation you'll find. It really forces you to completely reevaluate your priorities. And think about how accessible that reward is. It's not something reserved for people who can give away fortunes or go on long pilgrimages. It's attainable by anyone who dedicates, maybe 5 minutes before dawn?
Yeah.
And the Prophet's wife, Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, she noted he was never more consistent with any optional prayer than these 2 rak'ahs. The value is just enormous, but the investment is tiny, which suggests the value isn't just in the act itself, but maybe in the sincerity needed to do it when it's difficult.
But the main obligatory prayer itself, that secures an even bigger prize, doesn't it? Guaranteed paradise, basically. Through consistently praying the two cool prayers, al-burgeoning, which are Fajr and Asqalani.
Yes, and there's a fascinating insight into the spiritual psychology behind why these two. Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he commented on this. He explained that these two prayers are singled out because of the specific challenge each one presents. Fajr is tough because you have to conquer that powerful, very natural desire for sleep, for physical comfort. And Asr, the late afternoon prayer, is tough because it often falls right in the middle of peak worldly activity, business, work, socializing.
Okay. The two biggest distractions, maybe. Body and world.
Pretty much. Yeah. So consistently choosing the divine call over those two major human drives, rest and worldly engagement, is seen as this incredibly pure measure of faith. And that's why it's directly linked to securing paradise, Jenna. It proves your commitment goes beyond just physical comfort or material goals.
And for those who make the extra effort to pray Fajr in congregation, the reward gets multiplied even further, almost astronomically.
Oh, massively. Congregational prayer always multiplies rewards, but Fajr in congregation has this unique boost. Uthman ibn Affan reported the Prophet, peace be upon him, saying that praying Fajr in congregation is as if he has performed salat the whole night.
The whole night.
The whole night. It gives you the spiritual credit, essentially, of a full night's vigil, standing in prayer for an act that takes maybe 10, 15 minutes. It just shows the incredible blessing, the barakah, found in praying together at that critical time. Hashtag 2.2, the covenant of protection.
Okay, so beyond the huge eternal rewards, the sources also promise something immediate, tangible for the day itself. This concept of dhimma, this is really compelling. The Hadith says, whoever prays the Fajr prayer, he is then under Allah's protection. Dhimma. What exactly does dhimma mean here?
Dhimma is a powerful word. Historically, it meant things like a sacred pact, a covenant, a treaty guaranteeing security. In this spiritual context, as scholars like Imam al-Nawawi explained it, it means that when you consciously answer God's call at Fajr, you essentially enter into a covenant with Allah for that day. You are guaranteed safety, security, protection from all kinds of harm, spiritual, physical, psychological, for the whole day, right up until the next dawn.
So it's like a spiritual shield for the day's challenges. But the sources don't just offer protection, do they? There's a warning attached too.
Yes, and it's a very serious one, directed at everyone else. The Hadith explicitly warns people against harming or treating unfairly anyone who is under this divine protection earned through Fajr. To violate someone who is under Allah's dhimma isn't just harming a person. It's seen as a direct, serious violation of Allah's own sacred pact.
Wow, that elevates the act significantly.
The gravity is immense. Violating this covenant is said to invite swift divine consequences. It really elevates the spiritual status of the person who prayed Fajr that day, and it changes how others should interact with them. It transforms Fajr from just a personal act into something that secures your standing and safety within the divine plan for the next 24 hours. Hashtag 2.3. The distinguisher and enlighten.
The sources also use Fajr as a sort of litmus test, don't they, for gauging internal conviction, separating genuine sincerity from just, putting on a show. It's explicitly called the heaviest prayer for the hypocrites, the munafiqin. Why is Fajr such a tough test for hypocrisy?
Well, it comes down to visibility and motivation, really. A hypocrite often does things to be seen, right? Seeking praise, social status. But Fajr is prayed in the dark early morning. Most people are asleep. There's usually no audience, no social pressure, no public backpatting for getting up.
Right, nobody's watching.
Exactly. So to consistently pray Fajr, you need genuine internal conviction. It has to be purely between you and God. It's an act of hidden devotion. And that ability to prioritize the unseen command over comfort is what separates the true believer, driven by faith, from someone who's just performing for show.
And interestingly, this struggle in the physical darkness of the morning connects directly to getting a brilliant metaphysical light on the day of judgment.
Yes, that connection between the darkness now and the light then is one of the most beautiful rewards mentioned. The Prophet, peace be upon him, told believers, "Give good tidings to those who regularly walk to the mosques in darkness for having a perfect light, nur, on the day of judgment."
A perfect.
And this isn't just symbolic, it's described as essential. On Judgment Day, the path of paradise, the Sirat Bridge, is said to be narrow and shrouded in darkness. This light, earned by consistently navigating the pre-dawn darkness for Fajr, will be their guide. It literally lights the way, ensuring they can cross safely when others might stumble. It directly links the physical effort now to ultimate safety then. So, if the traditions focus a lot on the external rewards and protection, the great scholars often delved into Fajr's role in building inner strength, psychological, and spiritual discipline. It's often framed as the first big spiritual battle you fight each day, mainly against your own self. #Taj Twy 3.1, victory over spiritual inertia. This inner struggle is captured so vividly in that prophetic narration about the knots of Satan. The prophet described how, during sleep, Satan ties 3 knots at the back of your head. These knots basically bind you to laziness, to comfort, to spiritual sluggishness.
Right, I remember hearing about this. It sounds less like just a ritual and more like a strategy guide for winning a psychological battle before the day even properly starts. And the sources describe a step-by-step process for untying these knots, right? What are the steps? How do they map onto the Fajr routine?
Yes, it's a clear sequence, directly challenging those knots. The first knot is untied by the simplest act, just waking up and remembering Allah. Maybe saying that prayer upon waking. That basic intention to obey breaks the first layer of inertia.
Okay.
The second knot comes undone through purification, performing ablution, wudu. That physical act of washing, of renewal, helps shake off the remaining sleepiness and prepares both your body and mind for worship.
Makes sense.
And finally, the third, strongest knot is untied by actually performing the prayer itself. So when you complete that whole sequence, wake, wash, pray, you've won a significant spiritual victory before the sun's even up.
And the immediate result of winning that battle is a better mood for the whole day, isn't it?
Absolutely. The narration makes a clear contrast. If you succeed in the sequence, morning finds you lively and in good spirits. But if you fail, if you let those knots stay tied, the warning is that morning finds you in bad spirits and lazy. It frames Fajr as this essential daily reset. It determines whether you face the day energized by that divine connection or weighed down by inertia and feeling sluggish. #Taj 3.2. Fajr is essential spiritual nourishment.
The spiritual masters, they took this idea even further, didn't they? They didn't just see it as a duty or a battle, but as vital sustenance, like food for the soul. Imam al-Ghazali, for instance, in his famous Ihya, he positioned Fajr as that first key confrontation with the nafs, the self. It forces you to choose, kafir or God's will.
Yes, al-Ghazali saw that choice as fundamental for any spiritual progress. When the call comes, prayer is better than sleep, actually getting up is this profound, practical statement that your soul's needs really do come before your body's immediate, powerful demands. It builds the discipline needed to prioritize the unseen over the tangible, the immediate.
And that idea of nourishment is captured so well in that analogy about the morning meal.
Ah, yes, the Gada. This comes to us through Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, who was a student of the great scholar Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Qayyim recorded that his teacher, Ibn Taymiyyah, had this strict practice. After praying Fajr, he would sit in remembrance, making dhikr, until the sun was well up. When someone asked him why he was so consistent with this, Ibn Taymiyyah reportedly said, "This is my morning meal, Gada. If I do not have it, my strength leaves me."
That's incredibly powerful. He's literally equating that spiritual time, the prayer, plus the remembrance afterwards with physical food. Like, we know we can't just skip breakfast and expect to function well physically, right? But we often forget the soul needs its own breakfast.
Exactly. This analogy positions Fajr and the dhikr that follows not as some optional spiritual extra, but as essential fuel. It's the nourishment the soul needs to gain the strength, the patience, the mental clarity to handle whatever the day throws at you, materially or spiritually. Skipping it means starting the day spiritually running on empty. #Taj 3.3. Practice and barak.
So beyond the inner discipline, the Prophet's own practices, peace be upon him, they offer guidance on how to really maximize the benefits, the blessings, the barakah of this special time. How did he actually structure his Fajr prayer?
His practice was very deliberate, focused on making the most of that pre-dawn tranquility. He was known to pray Fajr early. In the Gala's time, that's when it's still quite dark, before the sky fully lightens. But even though it was early, he would often lengthen the Qur'an recitation, sometimes reading 60 to 100 verses just in the 2 main rakas.
Wow, that's quite long for Fajr.
It is, and the purpose seems twofold. First, to really use that quiet, peaceful time for deep, focused connection with the Qur'an. Second, it also gave people more time to arrive and join the congregation before the prayer finished. This intentional slowing down really highlights how important the Qur'an recitation is during Fajr.
And making this intentional effort at that time directly helps the believer receive barakah, the blessing, right? We hear that word a lot, but how does Fajr actually unlock barakah?
It links straight back to that famous prayer of the Prophet, "O Allah, bless my nation in their early mornings." So by getting up, praying, and then maybe starting your work or studies early during that pre-sunrise time, you are literally, physically, and spiritually putting yourself in the path of that requested blessing. You're positioning yourself to receive divine blessing in your time, your work, your livelihood.
Yeah.
Many scholars advise that engaging with the world productively right after Fajr is a way to maximize the efficiency and the spiritual return on your efforts for that day.
And the reward for sticking around after the prayer, for really using that golden hour before sunrise for remembrance. That's just astonishing, isn't it?
It really is. It turns that time between Fajr and sunrise into this period of unbelievable spiritual profit. The sources detail the practice, the sunnah, of post-Fajr fikr. Basically, staying in your place of prayer, remembering Allah, until the sun is fully risen, maybe about 15-20 minutes after sunrise, and then praying 2 optional rakas. This prayer was often called Salat al-Shraq or Duha.
And the reward for that sequence?
The Prophet, peace be upon him, stated very clearly that doing this earns the reward of a complete Hajj and Umrah. And he repeated, complete for emphasis. Linking a couple of hours of morning devotion to the reward of the greatest pilgrimage, it just underscores the incredible value placed on spiritual discipline during that specific part of the morning.
Okay, so we've covered the cosmic side, the daily protection, the inner nourishment. Now let's just make sure we grasp the ultimate, the final, the eternal payoff here. Hashtag 4.1, preparation for the beatific vision.
Right. If we tie all these threads together and look towards the highest spiritual aspiration, we find this profound link made by scholars like Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali. He connects consistently guarding those 2 cool prayers, Fajr and Asr, to the single greatest reward possible in paradise. The beatific vision, actually gazing upon Allah.
That's considered the absolute pinnacle, the highest honor. How do the Hadith make that connection?
Well, there's a famous Hadith where the Prophet, peace be upon him, was describing how clearly believers will see Allah in paradise. He compared it to seeing the full moon on a cloudless night, absolutely clear, no obstruction. And then, crucially, right after describing this incredible vision, he immediately urged his companions. So if you can avoid missing a prayer before sunrise Fajr and before sunset Asr, you must do so.
The timing of that advice is key.
It's not accidental. It strongly suggests that consistently prioritizing these specific 2 prayers, the ones demanding the biggest sacrifice of either comfort or worldly focus, is what prepares your heart, your soul in this life to be worthy of that ultimate honor in the next life. Guarding Fajr and Asr becomes this lifelong practice of choosing God when the pull of the body or the world is strongest.
So it shifts the prayer from just being an obligation to being like active training for the most sublime experience imaginable in the hereafter.
Exactly. It's about building a pattern of devotion that proves you're ready, you're serious, about seeking that closeness. Hashtag 4.2, comprehensive worldly and psychological benefits.
Okay, before we wrap up, let's just quickly bring it back to today. How does all this intense spiritual practice translate into benefits for the life you're living right now?
Well, the worldly benefits are actually huge, and they fit perfectly with a lot of modern ideas about productivity and mental well-being. That pre-dawn quiet is unique. It's an amazing time for mindfulness, for focused work, for deep connection, before all the noise and demands of the day kick in. And think about it. Starting your day by winning that inner battle, by fulfilling a major divine command. It just gives you this immediate sense of discipline, purpose, mental clarity. That kind of intentional start is a powerful defense against the anxiety that often comes from feeling rushed or reactive all the time. Fajr sort of puts you in control from the outset.
And we should also loop back to the connection with sustenance risk that we mentioned with Baraka.
Definitely. The scholarly advice really emphasizes this. Being awake, purified, and actively engaged, whether in worship or useful work between Fajr and sunrise, is seen as one of the most potent ways to attract your provision, your risk. By praying Fajr and using that time well, you're actively placing yourself in that blessed window when divine sustenance and success are said to be distributed. You're tapping into the full spiritual potential of the early morning. Hashtag tag outro. So if we try to bring this all together, Fajr really emerges as this central spiritual power source for a believer's day, and also a key factor in their eternal destiny. It's the time of that celestial handover, the subject of a divine oath guaranteeing justice, the source of daily protection, the dhimma, the soul's essential morning meal, the gada, and ultimately its preparation for seeing the Creator in paradise.
Right. So what's the bottom line here? The sources seem to give us a complete picture. Getting up for Fajr is answering a divine call. It's ensuring your day starts with certified light, overcoming darkness and inertia, and it sets a trajectory of faith, protection, and blessing that echoes way beyond just today into eternity. We talked about that profound link between Fajr and Asr, and the ultimate vision of God and honor for those who really prioritize those times. So maybe this raises a question for you, listening. If your daily start is guaranteed to be witnessed and reported back to the highest court by angels, what intentional actions could you maybe bring into your next dawn to make sure that report truly reflects your deepest hopes, your deepest aspirations for getting closer to the divine?
That's a very practical and profound thought to reflect on.
Indeed. Well, thank you for joining us on this very detailed deep dive into the spiritual geometry of dawn. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.